Mesopotamia, the forgotten cradle, how a civilization rose and fell between two rivers. A hook and intro. Imagine a world before cities, before writing, before laws. A world where humanity lived scattered, survival a daily struggle against nature's raw power. Then a miracle unfolded. In a land between two mighty, unpredictable rivers, people began to dream bigger, to build grander, to organize in ways never before conceived. They harnessed the very forces that threatened to destroy them, transforming a harsh landscape into the lush garden of human ingenuity. This was Mesopotamia, the land that gave birth to civilization itself. It was here, over 6,000 years ago, that the first farmers learned to bend rivers to their will, to make the unforgiving earth yield bountiful harvests. With surplus food came cities, then kings, then an entire civilization that would lay the groundwork for everything that came after. They invented the wheel, wrote the first laws, charted the stars, and even told the very first epic stories, tales of heroes and gods that still echo through time. They were pioneers in every sense, building an enduring legacy from the very mud of their environment. But the story of Mesopotamia is not just one of triumph. It is also a dramatic saga of relentless struggle. Their land, a fertile prize, was coveted by all. Waves of invaders crashed upon their borders, empires rose and fell in a dizzying cycle of conquest and renewal. Their very lifelines, the rivers, could turn from nurturing providers to devastating destroyers in an instant, bringing floods or droughts that crippled their societies. This fragile balance between astounding innovation and constant vulnerability defined Mesopotamia. Today, the mighty ziggurats lie in ruins, the ancient cities buried under centuries of sand. Yet the echoes of Mesopotamia persist in our modern world. The way we measure time, the principles of our laws, even some of our oldest myths, all have roots in this forgotten cradle. This is the story of how human civilization truly began, born from mud and genius, forged in conflict, and ultimately absorbed by the relentless march of history. It's a story of ambition, innovation, and the eternal human struggle against the forces of chaos. In this video, we will journey through the millennia, tracing the astonishing rise of Mesopotamian civilization, exploring its groundbreaking innovations, witnessing the epic struggles of its empires, and finally, understanding the complex reasons behind its eventual decline and its profound, lasting impact on the world we inhabit today. Prepare to discover the epic tale of the land where civilization was born. Historical context and setup. Our story begins in a unique geographical crucible known as the Fertile Crescent, a boomerang-shaped region stretching across the Near East. But its heart, its very soul, was Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. Here, the Tigris and Euphrates flowed, carving deep channels through an otherwise arid landscape. These rivers were life itself, carrying rich, dark silt from the mountains, depositing it onto the plains with each annual flood. This alluvial soil was incredibly fertile, capable of feeding thousands, then tens of thousands. However, the rivers were also capricious gods. Unlike the predictable Nile in Egypt, the Tigris and Euphrates flooded violently and unpredictably, often at the worst times for crops. Managing this duality was humanity's first great challenge, and in overcoming it, they birthed civilization. Around 10,000 BCE, humanity was taking its first steps away from nomadic hunter-gathering. In this region, people began to domesticate wild grains and animals, laying the groundwork for settled agriculture. By 7000 BCE, small agricultural villages dotted the Mesopotamian landscape. These early communities, like those of the Ubaid culture, developed basic irrigation techniques, building simple canals to divert water and protect fields. This was a monumental shift. No longer solely dependent on nature's whims, humans began to actively shape their environment. Surplus food meant not everyone had to farm. Some could specialize: potters, weavers, builders, even early administrators. This specialization, this newfound organization, laid the foundation for the most transformative event, the urban revolution. Around 4000 BCE, the Sumerians, a people whose origins remain a mystery but who were undeniably ingenious, began to build something entirely new: cities. These weren't just overgrown villages, they were complex, organized centers of political, economic, and religious power. Cities like Uruk, and Eridu became hubs of innovation, drawing people from the surrounding countryside, offering protection, opportunity, and a sense of collective identity. The Sumerians were pioneers. They faced immense logistical challenges. How do you govern tens of thousands of people? How do you record complex transactions, laws, and history? Their answer was revolutionary: writing. Around 3500–3000 BCE, they developed cuneiform, a system of wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay tablets. Initially for record-keeping, it rapidly evolved into a tool for literature, law, and even personal letters. This invention alone changed the course of human history, enabling unprecedented levels of administration and knowledge transmission. They also gave us the wheel, initially for pottery, then for carts and chariots, transforming transport and warfare. Their architects conceived of monumental structures, the ziggurats, towering step temples that reached towards the heavens, physical manifestations of their deep polytheistic faith. Each city had its own patron deity, its own ziggurat, and its own priest-king who ruled as a divine intermediary. This era, the early dynastic period from roughly 2900 to 2350 BCE, was characterized by independent Sumerian city-states. They were fiercely competitive, constantly vying for control over fertile lands and water rights. Treaties were signed, alliances formed, and often broken, leading to endemic warfare. Yet this very competition spurred further innovation in military technology, urban defense, and political organization. Each city-state was a crucible, a vibrant, often volatile experiment in human governance. The stage was set. In this land of abundant fertility and constant peril, a new way of living had emerged, built on ingenuity, hard work, and the stark reality of survival. But the very openness of Mesopotamia, the lack of natural defenses, also meant that these burgeoning civilizations would constantly be tested by forces from within and without. The story of Mesopotamia is a testament to both its brilliance and its inherent fragility. The story unfolds. The independent Sumerian city-states, with their individual gods and ambitious kings, formed the vibrant foundation of Mesopotamia. Each city, like Uruk or was a universe unto itself, believing its prosperity stemmed directly from its patron deity. Kings, often starting as priest-kings, served as earthly shepherds for their gods' flocks, overseeing colossal building projects, managing vast temple economies, and leading their citizens in times of war. One of the most enduring stories from this period is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a legendary king of Uruk. This tale, perhaps the oldest surviving piece of literature, tells of Gilgamesh's quest for immortality, his friendship with the wild man Enkidu, and his profound encounter with Utnapishtim, a man who survived a great flood sent by the gods. This ancient flood narrative, predating many others, speaks to the Mesopotamians' deep-seated fear and respect for their unpredictable rivers. It reminds us that even in their earliest forms, humans wrestled with universal themes of life, death, and destiny. But the era of independent city-states, while culturally rich, was also marked by endemic conflict. Cities like Lagash and Umma fought brutal, centuries-long wars over fertile borderlands, draining resources and lives. This constant struggle for dominance and resources created a power vacuum, an opportunity for a different kind of leader, a unifier. And that unifier emerged from the north. Around 2334 BCE, a figure named Sargon of Akkad rose to prominence. His origins are shrouded in legend. Some say he was a humble gardener, others that he was left in a basket on the river and found by a palace gardener. Whatever his past, his future was to be monumental. Sargon built a new capital, Akkad, whose precise location is still debated. He then systematically conquered all the Sumerian city-states, uniting Mesopotamia under a single, centralized rule for the first time. This was the birth of the Akkadian Empire, the world's first true empire. Sargon's empire was a revolution in governance. He replaced local Sumerian rulers with Akkadian loyalists, standardized administration, and fostered a common Akkadian language, a Semitic language alongside Sumerian. For over a century, the Akkadian Empire brought a period of relative peace and prosperity, extending its influence across much of the Near East. But even Sargon's monumental achievement couldn't last forever. Around 2154 BCE, the Akkadian Empire collapsed. Historians debate the precise reasons, but a combination of internal revolts, overextension, and crucially, a severe drought is believed to have played a major role. The land, weakened by environmental stress, could no longer support the vast populations, and the empire fractured. The Gutians, a mountain people, invaded, ushering in a period often called a Dark Age for Mesopotamia. After a period of chaos, a Sumerian resurgence known as the Ur-II dynasty briefly unified Mesopotamia once more. This Neo-Sumerian renaissance saw the rebuilding of ziggurats and a return to strong bureaucratic rule. But this too was ephemeral, falling to Elamite invaders around 2004 BCE, leading to another period of fragmentation. From the ashes of the Ur-II collapse, new powers emerged. Among them were the Amorites, a Semitic people from the west who established a powerful dynasty in the city of Babylon. Their most famous ruler was Hammurabi, who reigned from approximately 1792 to 1750 BCE. Hammurabi was an extraordinary figure, a brilliant military strategist, an astute administrator, and a visionary lawgiver. He conquered rival city-states and brought all of Mesopotamia under Babylonian control. But his most famous legacy is not in conquest, but in law. Hammurabi's code, carved onto a tall basalt stele, is one of the oldest and most complete legal codes known to humanity. It established principles of justice, property rights, and punishments, famously including the eye for an eye retribution for certain offenses. This code wasn't just about punishment, it was about creating a stable, orderly society reflecting a pragmatic, earthly focus. The Old Babylonian Empire under Hammurabi was a golden age of culture, mathematics, and astronomy. Their astronomers meticulously charted celestial movements, laying the groundwork for later Greek and Arab advancements. But like all Mesopotamian empires, it too was fragile. Around 1595 BCE, a sudden raid by the Hittites from Anatolia sacked Babylon, ending Hammurabi's dynasty and plunging Mesopotamia into another period of foreign domination, this time by the Kassites. Centuries later, a new power rose to dominate Mesopotamia, the Assyrians. Hailing from northern Mesopotamia, the Assyrians were a militaristic people who built an empire of unprecedented scale and brutality. By the Neo-Assyrian period, 911–609 BCE, they commanded an army that struck terror into the hearts of their enemies. They pioneered siege warfare, used iron weaponry, and developed efficient administrative techniques to control their vast empire, which stretched from Egypt to Persia. Assyrian kings like Ashurbanipal were not just ruthless warriors, they were also patrons of culture. Ashurbanipal established a colossal library in his capital, Nineveh, meticulously collecting and preserving thousands of cuneiform tablets from across Mesopotamia. This library became an invaluable repository of Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian literature, history, and scientific knowledge. It is thanks to Ashurbanipal's foresight that many of these ancient texts, including the Epic of Gilgamesh, survive today. However, the Assyrian Empire's very ruthlessness sowed the seeds of its destruction. The constant warfare, heavy taxation, and brutal deportations fueled widespread resentment. In 612 BCE, a coalition of Babylonians, Chaldeans, and Medes launched a devastating assault, utterly destroying Nineveh and bringing the mighty Assyrian Empire to its knees. From the ruins of the Assyrian Empire, Babylon rose again. The Neo-Babylonian Empire, 626–539 BCE, under rulers like Nebuchadnezzar II, witnessed a spectacular resurgence of Babylonian power and culture. Nebuchadnezzar II rebuilt Babylon into one of the most magnificent cities of the ancient world. Its famous Ishtar Gate, adorned with vibrant glazed bricks and mythological animals, was a breathtaking entrance. Legend also attributes the Hanging Gardens, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, to his reign, built for his homesick wife. Nebuchadnezzar II was a formidable conqueror. He famously destroyed Jerusalem in 587 BCE and deported many of its inhabitants to Babylon, an event known as the Babylonian captivity. For decades, the exiled Judeans lived in Mesopotamia, witnessing its grandeur and developing many of their religious and literary traditions in response to their new environment. Yet even this last great flowering of independent Mesopotamian power was destined to fall. By the mid-6th century BCE, a new power was rising to the east, the Achaemenid Persian Empire. Led by the brilliant Cyrus the Great, the Persians swept across the Near East. In 539 BCE, Cyrus marched on Babylon. The city, once considered impregnable, fell with surprising ease, either through treachery or a clever diversion of the Euphrates River that flowed through its walls. The fall of Babylon to Cyrus the Great marked a profound turning point. For millennia, Mesopotamia had been a theater of independent empires, a cradle of self-governing city-states, and a constant innovator in governance and technology. Now it would become a mere province within a much larger global empire. The distinct political identity of Mesopotamia, as a region ruled by its indigenous peoples, faded into history. Impact and legacy. The conquest by Cyrus the Great in 539 BCE did not mean the immediate disappearance of Mesopotamian culture. Far from it. The Persians, and later the Greeks under Alexander the Great, recognized the deep administrative and intellectual heritage of the region. They often adopted and adapted Mesopotamian practices in governance, astronomy, and architecture. Mesopotamia became a valuable, albeit subordinate, part of successive vast empires, from the Achaemenids to the Hellenistic Seleucids, then the Parthians, and finally the Romans. The immediate outcome of this shift was a loss of independent political power, but a continuation of cultural influence. Mesopotamian scribes and astronomers continued their work, their knowledge flowing into the broader Hellenistic world, where it would later influence Greek and Roman science. However, the use of cuneiform writing gradually declined, replaced by more efficient alphabetic scripts. Many of the great cities, while still inhabited, lost their imperial grandeur as new administrative centers emerged elsewhere. The long-term legacy of Mesopotamia, however, is truly monumental, profoundly shaping the trajectory of human civilization. Let's explore some of its most enduring impacts. First, law and governance. Hammurabi's code wasn't just a collection of laws, it was a foundational document that established the idea of a comprehensive, written legal system. It provided a precedent for principles of justice, property rights, and social order that influenced legal traditions for millennia, eventually impacting legal thought in the Near East and even the nascent legal systems of ancient Greece and Rome. The very concept of codified law, ensuring a degree of predictability and justice, originates here. Second, writing and literature. Cuneiform, one of humanity's earliest writing systems, revolutionized administration, commerce, and the transmission of knowledge. It laid the groundwork for all subsequent writing, including the alphabetic scripts we use today. And through works like the Epic of Gilgamesh, Mesopotamia gave us humanity's first great epic, exploring universal themes of heroism, friendship, mortality, and the search for meaning. These stories not only enriched their own culture but also influenced later mythological and religious narratives across the Near East. Third, mathematics, astronomy, and timekeeping. The Mesopotamians developed a sophisticated sexagesimal or base 60 number system. This wasn't just an abstract concept, it was intensely practical. Why 60? Because it's easily divisible by many numbers. This system gave us the 60-second minute, the 60-minute hour, and the 360 degrees in a circle. Their meticulous astronomical observations, initially for astrological and agricultural purposes, led to accurate calendars and laid the groundwork for later Greek and Arab advancements in the study of the cosmos. Fourth, urbanism. The very concept of the city, a densely populated, organized center of political, economic, and cultural life, originated in Mesopotamia. Their cities, with monumental temples, administrative centers, specialized labor, and sophisticated infrastructure, set a precedent for urban living that continues to this day. They showed humanity how to live together on an unprecedented scale. Finally, religious and mythological influence. Mesopotamian polytheistic beliefs, creation myths, and flood narratives, particularly from the Epic of Gilgamesh, bear striking thematic resemblances to stories found in later Abrahamic religions. The story of Abraham, originating from the Sumerian city of Ur, directly links Mesopotamia to a foundational figure of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. This underscores the profound cultural interconnectedness of the ancient Near East. In comparative perspective, Mesopotamia stands in stark contrast to its contemporary ancient Egypt. While Egypt, protected by vast deserts and the predictable Nile, developed a more unified, centralized, and stable civilization focused on continuity and the afterlife, Mesopotamia's open geography and unpredictable rivers fostered a more dynamic, often turbulent, and outwardly focused culture. This led to greater innovation in areas like law and writing complexity, but also to recurrent cycles of invasion and political fragmentation. Its achievements were often forged in the fires of constant competition and adaptation. Reflections and lessons. The saga of Mesopotamia offers profound insights into the human condition and the enduring challenges of civilization. What can we, living in the 21st century, learn from this ancient land between two rivers? Firstly, it is a testament to human ingenuity and resilience in the face of adversity. The Mesopotamians didn't just survive in a challenging environment, they thrived, inventing the very tools and systems that define complex societies. Their ability to transform floodplains into fertile fields, to create order out of chaos, speaks to an incredible capacity for innovation and collective action. It reminds us that humanity's greatest achievements often arise from necessity. Secondly, Mesopotamia's history is a powerful illustration of the cyclical nature of power and the fragility of empires. Time and again, powerful states rose, unified vast territories, and then crumbled under the weight of internal strife, overextension, or relentless external pressure. It highlights that no empire, however mighty, is eternal, and that centralized power is always a delicate balancing act. Thirdly, the Mesopotamian experience provides crucial lessons in environmental sustainability. The long-term problem of soil salinization due to over-irrigation in southern Mesopotamia is a stark reminder of humanity's impact on its environment. It shows that even seemingly benevolent technological advancements can have unintended, devastating consequences over centuries. This ancient struggle for water and fertile land resonates powerfully with modern global challenges of climate change and resource management. Finally, the story of Mesopotamia underscores the enduring power of ideas and culture. Even as political entities collapsed and new rulers swept in, The fundamental innovations writing, law, mathematics persisted, absorbed, and adapted by successive civilizations. It reminds us that true legacy lies not just in conquest, but in the intellectual and cultural heritage that transcends generations and borders. Let these reflections prompt us to consider: do the cyclical patterns of empires rising and falling in Mesopotamia offer any predictive insights into the geopolitical landscape of today? How might a more fluid and adaptable political system, perhaps like the early city-states, compare to the rigid imperial structures that repeatedly collapsed? What balance should modern societies strike between rapid innovation and long-term environmental sustainability, given Mesopotamia's warning? Can understanding ancient conflicts and their resolutions help us navigate modern international relations more effectively? What role does the preservation of historical knowledge, as seen in Ashurbanipal's library, play in the resilience of a civilization? How do the universal themes in the Epic of Gilgamesh still connect us to the existential questions posed by humanity over 4,000 years ago? Outro. From the mud brick villages that first dotted the Fertile Crescent to the towering ziggurats and the sprawling, law-bound cities, Mesopotamia forged the very blueprint of human civilization. We've witnessed its astonishing inventions: the wheel, cuneiform writing, codified laws, and the earliest astronomical charts. We've traced the dramatic rise and fall of its empires: the Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, each leaving an indelible mark before succumbing to the twin pressures of internal conflict and external invasion. And we've learned how environmental challenges, particularly the salinization of their vital agricultural lands, contributed to their long-term decline. But the story of Mesopotamia is far from over. Its legacy lives on, not just in museum exhibits, but in the very fabric of our daily lives and our understanding of what it means to be human. The journey through this ancient land reveals a profound truth. History is not just a collection of dates and names, but a living narrative of human endeavor, fraught with both breathtaking triumphs and sobering lessons. If you found this deep dive into Mesopotamia fascinating, there's so much more to explore. You might be interested in the mysterious Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BCE, which saw many civilizations across the Near East and Mediterranean simultaneously crumble, leaving a power vacuum from which new societies emerged. Or perhaps the rise of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, which ultimately absorbed Mesopotamia and built the largest empire the world had yet seen. We could also explore the legacy of the Roman Empire in Mesopotamia, as the region became a contested frontier, shaping its final centuries as a classical cultural entity. Or even the dramatic life and conquests of Alexander the Great, who brought Hellenistic culture to the heart of this ancient land. History is not simply about what happened, it's about understanding why and what it teaches us about ourselves. The rise and fall of Mesopotamia reminds us that even the most innovative and powerful civilizations are vulnerable, yet their contributions can echo for millennia. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the forgotten cradle of civilization.